Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I understand that today your questions are going to center on the nature of intelligence and the psychology of intelligence. Yes, let's begin.
Mr. Branden, how do you judge the degree of a person's intelligence?
First of all, let's clarify what we mean by intelligence. By intelligence, we refer to a person's abstract capacity, to the range of the abstractions or concepts that his mind is able to hold and work with. The higher the intelligence, the more powerful the mind, the wider the abstract range. Now, when you ask how do we judge a person's intelligence, I assume you are talking about his operational intelligence, not some supposed native endowment. We know, or rather we have reason to think, that people may be born with certain inherited differences with regard to the potential of their brain or of their intelligence, assuming this potential was optimized. However, most people evidently actualize only a comparatively small portion of their own intellectual potential, and here I'll be concerned not with any suppositions or hypotheses about the abstract brain potential, but rather about the functional or operational intelligence of the person. Now, again, your inquiry is directed, if I understand you, not at the theory behind intelligence tests, but more on a common sense level. How do I judge in a clinical setting talking to a person? Or how might you judge meeting a person socially? And I would answer that what I go by is the highest level abstract connection which I see the person make. Now, you might meet a person and you might talk with him on one or two occasions, and he might not say anything or do anything to exhibit a conspicuously high intelligence, and then, in a subsequent conversation, he may make some observation very abstract, very sophisticated, involving very high-level concepts and representing a really good conceptual integration. And in that moment, he is revealing to you, the observer, a potential, a level of intelligence way above his day-by-day typical performance. But if I were judging him, I would judge by his heights, because if he can reach it once, then he can reach it, period. And then it becomes a question of why he doesn't function on that level all the time. I think it would be a great mistake to judge a person in terms of his average daily performance, because too many psychological factors prevent people from functioning on or exhibiting the fullest range of their intelligence much of the time due to problems or blocks or other factors. Yes, next question.
To what extent is high intelligence a result of psychological attitudes rather than of heredity?
Well, to begin with, it wouldn't be merely an issue of psychological attitudes. It would also be an issue of the training, the learning process, the development. I think that, and this has been conclusively demonstrated, that the development which the mind is given, especially in its early years, the development which does or does not take place, can be crucially important to the subsequent intelligence level exhibited by the adult. So it's somewhat misleading to contrast only psychological attitudes or heredity, because there's another factor, namely crucial developments which ideally take place in the early years of the child's life, which tend to lead him in the direction of acquiring the intellectual potential. But I would like to talk a little bit about the issue of psychological attitudes, because it's my observation that they have a great deal to do with the intelligence a person actually attains. I have been impressed by this in my own therapeutic practice many, many times, where I can see that most, if not all, of my patients and clients are functioning conspicuously beneath their intellectual potential, judging it by the standard I indicated in the preceding question. They will occasionally say things or do things which will indicate a much more potent mental instrument that they are getting any use of or functioning on in their day-by-day lives. And when I see how, as they solve certain problems and increase in motivation to achieve things and rid themselves of various types of fears, you can actually see their functional or their operating intelligence rising in front of your eyes, meaning the level of the abstract integrations which they're able to make, which are manifest in conversations. You can see these rises taking place as they improve in therapy, and from that we have to draw the inference that psychological attitudes have a great deal to do with the final result, meaning how much intelligence is a person actually displaying, achieving, living by. Yes?
Which psychological attitude do you regard as especially important to the development of the person's intellectual potential?
Well, I think there are several attitudes. I would say the most important is the desire to understand, the reality with which one has to deal. I can't think of any factor more potent and more powerful in determining the growth of a person's intelligence than the obvious motivation of the will to understand, to feel that you are in mental control of your environment. And that, of course, carries with it a very close other factor, the conviction that the world around you, that reality is such that your mind is able to understand it. You see, some children are so shattered by the irrationality to which they are exposed in their early years, by the incomprehensible contradictions in their environment at home, by the bewildering madness and inconsistency that they encounter, that they form the very tragic conclusion that reality, or certainly the world of people, is simply unknowable, that no effort of their thinking is ever going to penetrate that fog. So they're undercut on the level of incentives, and they are undermined, perhaps, in their will to understand. So these two factors are obviously important. The drive, the impulse, the passionate desire to be in mental control, to achieve intelligibility with regard to those aspects of reality that touch on one's own life, and collaterally the conviction that reality is such that it can be understandable to you, that your mind is competent to make sense of it all. Then beyond that, there are other important factors that I would mention. What kind of goals a person has, what kind of ambitions he has, is going to be very important. If, for example, a person sets himself in the direction of intellectually demanding goals, if he wants goals that will demand everything he's got to give, if he's not afraid to venture forth, if he's not afraid of challenges, if he's not afraid of the unfamiliar, if he meets the challenges of life head on, if he wants to grow, if he sets the kind of goals that will demand growth of him, then obviously that pattern of behavior will tend to further the development of his intelligence. If, on the other hand, in the face of the new or the unfamiliar, he retreats out of fear and sets more modest goals, goals which are less intellectually demanding, then obviously he does not develop his mind as much as he otherwise might. Therefore, another very important factor in determining our intellectual development will be the kind of goals that we set. Now, there are many other factors which I think contribute, but these three are the most essential.